Welcome to the latest Seahawks Draft Blog live stream. Rob Staton live in Munich and Robbie back in the United States, ready to talk about the Seahawks loss to Tampa Bay. It's not such an instant reaction stream today because it's sometime after the game is finished, but we're going to get into it. I'll talk about the experience of being in Germany for this game as well. Let's start with the game itself, and a disappointing loss, Robbie. I think for me, I looked up at the scoreboard at the end of the third quarter and expected to see something like a 20-point deficit looking for me, and it was still 14-3. It kind of felt like it was an absolute domination by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but it ended up being quite a close game. It's a real frustration that the defense couldn't get the ball back at the end to give the offense one last shot. But I have to say, I'm not that downhearted by the game today. I think it's a disappointing loss, but not one that I think we need to overreact to. Give us your thoughts on the game that you've just seen.
Yeah, we just got our butt whooped in every aspect of the game. I don't want to blame it on just, the travel or whatever, because Tampa had to travel too, but it's just like one of those games where it just didn't seem like anything was going right. And if the momentum switched just a little bit, you thought, okay, they made a stupid decision. They could have put this game away early, and we gave the ball, and they gave us the ball right back. And then we go down and Geno fumbles in the red zone and we give it back to him. And it just didn't seem like much was going our way today. Little stupid things like ticky-tacky, ref getting his butt hurt about, DK saying something to him, and, just a lot of different, just little things. It just didn't feel like it was going to go our way. And again, like you said, I'm not overly disappointed, or I don't want to overreact to this game. I am disappointed in the loss, but I'm not going to overreact to this. I mean, but the only thing that's really sad is we haven't beaten a team in NFC West or NFC South yet. And that just seems weird. But for the most part, for me, it's just like it's one of those games. Like Geno didn't seem like he played very well. They didn't get the ball really running very well today either. Our defensive line is absolutely garbage today. Just a lot of just miscues and just didn't seem ready to play. They just came out and Tampa took it to us.
Yeah, there's sort of like a bigger picture sort of thought process with all these games, isn't there? And there's an in the moment kind of thing. And I think I want to start with the bigger picture thought, actually, rather than just getting into what was wrong, what was right about today. Robbie, it just feels a little bit like this loss might not be the worst thing in the world for the Seahawks and for the Seahawks fan base, because it just offers a bit of perspective on this season. This was not going to be a 12-team year. However well they've played in the last 4 games to get to the point where they were 6-3, I don't think they were going to finish in that kind of way. I don't think they were going to be pushing, for example, for the number 2 seed. This is still a team that has made significant changes in the calendar year and is going to have difficult days. And this was one of those difficult days. And the objective of a day like this is to show probably a bit of character at the end, which they did, in fairness. They definitely did. And learn from it. And try and learn from it so that in a future game, and I'm not even talking about this year, I'm maybe even talking about next year, some of these younger players will know what this feels like and what they have to do when a game starts turning a little bit like this one very early in the game, because it is sort of building, and we have to sort of have that perspective. The Seahawks have got a chance to make the playoffs. They've got a real chance to make the playoffs because they've won 6 of the first 10 games. And I think they probably will make the playoffs. But I do think that this is it just keeps everybody a bit level-headed, Robbie. It just keeps everybody sort of understanding what this season is. It reminds you that when you come up against Tom Brady and a team that won the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, that this can happen. And it may well happen when they play Derek Carr in 2 weeks. And it may well happen in 3 weeks' time when they play the LA Rams, who they never particularly play well against, home or away. That is a distinct possibility. And yet we have to keep that in the back of your head. Even when you're enjoying the good moments, this is still a team that is on a journey. It hasn't arrived yet.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And our young guys kind of had a rough day. Our corners had a rough day. And somebody just said, Robert said Tom Brady eats up inexperienced cornerbacks, and that's absolutely what happened. And and that's part of it. I think the other thing that I I don't know if we just need a full reset on our defensive line and our linebacker situation, but they were just terrible today. And I never understood some of the thought process behind, Brian Monet not being inactive today when, he's a run stopper. I get that Tampa Bay hadn't really put together a running game like they did today, but you need to still be able to stop it. You're playing Tom Brady. I mean, it just seems like a weird situation to do when you need a guy like that who can stop the run. But I agree. I think this is a team that can make the playoffs. I wouldn't expect a deep playoff run, but this is way better than what I would have expected. Start of the season. So again, I came into the season with no expectations to win more than 3 games. We've already doubled that. I'm very excited. Like, this is still a fun team to watch. I don't know if like that. They put it together in the last 8 minutes, right? That's when they started scoring some points and making it a game again. I don't know if that was due to Tampa just backing off and playing prevent defense, or if it, had to do with, us finally just having that urgency to get it together. But, this is still a fun team to watch. And I still have, we still have the Chiefs looming, the Niners are looming. We got the Rams twice. And so there's going to be some tough games ahead, but I still think this is a team that has a chance to crack the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely still has a chance. I think what it probably reminds us, and when you mentioned those games coming up, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. It might be a 9-win team. It might be a 9-8 season. And that sounds really disappointing, because when you're 6-3, that means you go, 3-5 the rest of the way, and that's not great. But they've lost one now, so it's only 3-4. And when you're playing the Rams twice, and I know the Rams haven't looked great, but they're still the Rams, and the Seahawks have had real difficulty against Sean McVay. You have got to play the Niners, who are obviously going to be a tough opponent, although the Seahawks generally play the Niners well. They didn't in week 2, and you've got games like the Chiefs, so it's not beyond the realms of possibility that this ends up being a 9-8 season, which is probably a bit more realistic than we were all thinking before this game, when the defense was performing at a great level, the offense was looking fantastic. Again, it maybe just sort of lowers expectations, and that might not be such a bad thing. There's a lot of national attention. Gino's being talked about as an MVP candidate. You've got all these, the defense is looking amazing. I listened to a piece that Uchenna and Wosu did with the 33rd team this week, telling all the people who didn't believe in this team it's too late to get on the bandwagon. Well, that's not really how it works. That's not really the kind of thing that you should be saying, I think, when you're just in the middle of a season. So look, if it's 10, I think 10-7 would be an absolute, a magical job by the coaches and the players if they can get to that. If it's 9-8, I don't think everybody should overreact to sort of and call it a missed opportunity. You mentioned there, Robbie, about the defensive line, and I do want to talk specifically about the game. I'm sort of doing bigger picture stuff at the moment. That's what I kind of wanted to start with. It was what's most interesting to me for the future of this team, because I think that is more important than specifically what happens in 2022. You said to rebuild, maybe the D-line and the linebacker position needs a rebuild. See, I don't think it needs a rebuild per se. I think they've got some decent pieces. I think people like Al Woods and Shelby Harris, and even, your Quinton Jeffersons and people like that, and then an outside, and Wosu and Mafe, they're decent players. They are decent players that you need players like that to have a good rotation, to have a good defensive line. What they really, really lack is a star. They need somebody who commands protections, so that when you go into a game like this, the team has spent the whole week saying, how are we going to protect against this guy? How are we going to block this guy? We're going to shift up. We're going to have 2 guys blocking him all the time to create opportunities for other people. It felt a little bit like today for me, Robbie. It was just all so easy for Tampa Bay, because they could just they didn't really have to worry about any one individual. They were just blocking man up in the running game, and they were beating the defensive line. There was nobody there who could just create something, who could wreck a game on his own. Nobody was playing particularly well, and they were just pushing Seattle back. There was no real pass rush on Tom Brady because of that. And they need somebody either off the edge who is going to make something happen in that first half to just change the complexion of the game. A big sack to get you off the field, a sack fumble, somebody collapsing the interior, forcing a mistake from the quarterback. They don't have anybody like that. I just don't know how you get that someone, Robbie. Now, yes, what will happen when we talk about this is people will start talking about, we'll trade up, because there's, I don't think Will Anderson is that guy. I think he's a good pass rusher. I'm not sure that he's a game wrecker. because he's not played particularly well this year. But, Jalen Carter was fantastic again yesterday and was fantastic the week before. People will say that's the ideal kind of player that Seattle needs. And I'm tempted to agree with him, Robbie. I'm just not sure that, as much as I want that sort of game wrecker, I also think this team could really benefit from just getting thicker and better across the board in terms of its depth. And I don't really like the idea of trading away multiple firsts or multiple first and second round picks to just go and get one player, because I still think it's a team, as we've seen today, that's a little bit thin on quality, that needs that injection of 4 or 5 good players again from a really solid draft class that they've had this year to take a step forward.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great to have that, and kind of what you were talking about, like trading picks for players. I wouldn't want to do that either. What I would like to see a little bit is just different looks, different pressures, sending different guys. If you're not getting home, first of all, let me just back up and just say, Tom Brady gets the ball out so damn quick. It's really annoying. He just gets out so fast. But then even when he had to sit back there for, a couple extra seconds, he had all the time to throw. So we weren't getting home. But that first half, he was getting rid of the ball really fast. But I just want to see them do something different and adjust the way they apply pressure instead of just sending 4 or sending a 5th linebacker. Get creative with your looks and really try to, bring pressure from different angles that aren't expected, because it looked very basic today and we weren't getting there. So like literally Tom stayed clean all day, and you can't win in the NFL like that.
You can't. And I think that's part of I think the reason that Tom Brady had such an easy day today is because the running game was so good for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, the first few drives, I'd say like the first 2 drives from each team, it was both were kind of feeling each other out. And then all of a sudden, Tampa Bay figured it out. And it felt like they could always get 4 yards in the running game. And it's funny how you keep getting that churn of 3 and 4 yards on first and second down when you're running the ball, getting into third and short, being able to convert. All of a sudden, momentum builds. Whereas with Seattle, it was 1 yard in the running game, 2 yards in the running game. They never really sort of got a foothold in the game. And it was drifting away from them very, very quickly. I just think they just need that. And look, I saw people saying Jordan Brooks had a great game today. From my view, and listen, I thought he played poorly today. I know that he had a couple of good moments. I didn't personally see the great game that a lot of people on Twitter saw with Jordan Brooks. I mean, we've just had a super chat, as if the timing is perfect there, as if we planned it. Devontae Morrison's got in touch with the super chat. Thank you for that. Get your super chats in. If you've got a question for Robbie and I, send them in and we'll come straight to them. Devontae says, after 2 years, is Jordan Brooks a first-round bust? But it's his 3rd year now. The thing is, Robbie, I don't think he's a bust. But the noticeable thing for me was watching Devin White versus Jordan Brooks today. And look, it's hard because Devin White's I know he's had a bit of a rough patch. He had a bad game, didn't he, against, was it the last game? Was it the Rams, or was it the game before last when he got trucked? But in this game, I thought he was possibly the best player on the field. He was flying to the ball, but he's huge. And then you sort of compare that to Jordan Brooks, and there were quite a few plays where he's jogging around, and I'm thinking, I'm just not feeling it with this guy. And it seems to me when the D-line can't create pressure and it can't do what it's done for the last 4 games, the whole of that sort of second level is exposed. Your linebackers, your secondary, they all sort of are infected by it. And you could kind of see that on that last drive. There was nothing. They never really came close in that last 4 minutes to getting a stop. There was not even like a huge, big 3rd down conversion that was backbreaking. It was just, no, they keep going, and the game's over. And that's when you need that, for me, that game-wrecking player. But I don't want them to trade up and throw all their eggs in the basket of one player. I'll tell you what I would be interested in, and I know this is, again, veering away from the game talk and into the draft. The more that I watch of Kalijah Kancey at Pittsburgh, the more I like. He had 3 sacks yesterday. He is 6 foot, 280 pounds. So he is not an orthodox defensive tackle. He is not the kind of player that you can line up, Robbie, on first down consistently, because people will just run straight at him. He's 6 foot, 280 pounds. But maybe if you put a couple of big guys in the middle, you can line him up as a defensive end. He just gets in the backfield. 3 more sacks yesterday. He's going to perform outstandingly at the combine. Everyone at Pittsburgh's talking him up. His first step quickness is unbelievable, and he gets into the backfield and makes plays. I mean, it's a bit of an easy comparison to make because Aaron Donald went to Pittsburgh as well. But they're comparing him to Aaron Donald. Now, he isn't Aaron Donald because nobody's Aaron Donald. There's never going to be another Aaron Donald. But he might be the next best thing. Because of his size, he's not going to go as high as Aaron Donald did. I just wonder, could somebody like that just maybe who can just consistently penetrate and get into the backfield? Do you have to roll the dice on somebody like that who's showing in college that he can go and make plays to try and change things, Robbie? Because they really need somebody. They've never had it. They've never had it under Pete Carroll, have they? That really dynamic interior rusher.
No, it's funny you brought up Aaron Donald. And yeah, I know they both went to Pitt, but they actually said the same thing about Aaron Donald when he was coming out, that he was just a little too small to be playing inside, and they line him up all over. I'm going to go back real fast to Jordan Brooks, the Jordan Brooks comment. He had 1 tackle for a loss, and it was a pretty good play. I'll give him that. Other than that, there was nothing I saw. I mean, yeah, he had 14 tackles, 11 were solo, but that's because they were either running right at him or whatever the case might be. There's nothing about his game that screams, top talent and, he needs to be paid or anything like that. So I don't think he had a great game. I mean, he was just, Bobby Wagner had a ton of tackles too. And last year he looked god awful last year. So I don't know. I think, I don't know if I would say he's a first round bust, but I would definitely say that he wasn't deserving of a first round grade and probably shouldn't have been taken there. I don't know if he's a bust. I think that sounds, bust is definitive, isn't it? It's failure. Yeah. And he's not a complete failure, but to me, he's somebody, Robbie, that you don't extend him after this season, after 3 years, when you can extend him for the first time. He's somebody that you take up the 5th year option and play it by ear, or you don't take up the 5th year option and you let him play out his contract and then make a call. I don't think they need to be rushing to talk contract with him. No, totally agree. Yeah. I want to see how the rest of the year plays out, but I mean, I've been fairly underwhelmed by our linebackers in general. I mean, honestly, and then, like you said, getting someone who could come in and, make an impact on the interior rush would be fantastic, because we haven't had it. And, it'd be great to get somebody in. I'm sorry, what was the guy that you just mentioned from Pitt?
So his name is Kalijah Kancey. So that
I haven't.
Go and check him out.
I'll have to listen.
Go on, just put his name into Twitter search, Robbie, when you finish the stream, and it's spelled Calijah, Kalijah Kancey, Kancey, and if you put his name into Twitter, you'll see his 3 sacks from yesterday, and you'll be blown away with just the videos that Pittsburgh put out. It's on the Pittsburgh Pitt Panthers Twitter account. They tweeted the videos. I mean, the thing is with Aaron Donald is because people do compare him to Aaron Donald, and if you search for Kalijah Kancey, you will see people talking about Aaron Donald. What we need to remember about Aaron Donald is, I've just got his stats up here, and his basically 3 seasons at Pittsburgh. He played a little bit in his first year, but the guy had 66 tackles for a loss and 29.5 sacks in his college career. 66 tackles for a loss, including 28.5 tackles for a loss in his final season at Pittsburgh. That's why Aaron Donald is Aaron Donald. And then when you look at Kalijah Kancey, it's not too bad. 34 tackles for a loss, 15.5 sacks, but it's basically half the production. And Kancey's had a decent college career, but yeah, he's not Aaron Donald. Someone has suggested taking Iker, who's the defensive tackle at Baylor, over Kancey, just because he's 360 pounds. I don't think the Seahawks need another beefy interior guy. I think they need someone who can get in the backfield. They need somebody who can get in the bloody backfield and make some plays. But yes, they were dominated early on in the trenches, Robbie. That was a big problem. Yeah,
any sort of tackle for a loss would be great. We had 1 today. Yeah, 1 tackle for a loss by Jordan Brooks. That was literally it. There was no other.
Yeah, not very good. And then onto the offense, Robbie. I thought it was, I don't know. This seems like a bit of a trend. Maybe not a trend. It's a couple of weeks in a row now where the offense has been very conservative to start the game. Like, they came out today and it seemed like they were trying to pitch it outside. They were trying to get the running game going, but they were trying to get Ken Walker to the perimeter and try and get him outside into space. There was one play where if it wasn't for Devin White, he would have had a huge run. That's kind of why I was talking about Devin White. Devin White came flying out of nowhere and made a tackle and brought it as a brilliant tackle as well. A lot of linebackers in that situation Walker had run through them and would have made the big game. And it was so open. It was right in front of me in the press box. It was so open, and it was he just made that tackle in time, Devin White, and it was fantastic. But apart from that, there was nothing. Tampa Bay was stacking the box. They had their linebackers playing downfield. Robbie, it was very aggressive. We've seen this from Todd Bowles when he was the Arizona defensive coordinator. And the thing that frustrated me a little bit, Robbie, is it just felt like the Seahawks played within themselves. Like they thought, well, we'll just stick in this again like they did last week. We'll not give anything away. We'll work out what they're doing, and then we'll react to that. And it was okay last week because they had the 3 drives at the end and won the game. But today, they'd put themselves in such a hole at half time. You kind of felt like, well, could you not have asked a few more questions early on? Why couldn't you have got Geno Smith on the run a little bit more sooner, to complement that? Could you have had a bit more read option early on to get Geno out wide? And if not, how are you going to get that stat box? Because, you don't have to be an X's and O expert, because I'm ranked 1,749 in the world for X's and O's expert. I know nothing about X's and O's. I'm not going to get into that kind of stuff. But what I will say is that if I see a stat box, Robbie, I know not to run at it over and over and over again. And it just felt a little bit like, could you not have play action? Could you have not had some crossing routes? Could you not have got Geno on the move a little bit and had those, some of those? Look, I know it's easy to say, do what you did last week that worked and get the tight ends on the move and do all that. Tampa Bay will have planned for that. They will have had an answer for that, I'm sure. But I would have thought getting Geno on the move and getting crossing routes would have been a better idea than just running it into a brick wall over and over again. And it frustrated me, Robbie, because we saw at the end, they were moving the ball and they were being a bit more creative. And you kind of think, if you'd have just done that a little bit sooner, if you had been, like I came here today thinking they're going to have a trick play, because they tend to have like trick plays in games like this. Is it going to be a flea flicker? Are they going to do something just to unsettle Tampa Bay? And then nothing. It was nothing. It was so conservative in that first half. And that's 2 games in a row. I'd like to see them come out a bit more aggressive in the next game against the Raiders. You've got 2 weeks to plan and prepare. Go and attack them. Give them some scoreboard pressure. Because if that game had been even 14-7 at halftime, Robbie, I think the Seahawks could have won that game. But at 14, it was such a big mountain to climb.
Yeah. And I think for me, like in the first quarter, I was getting frustrated. Like, and you talk about the runs, and I mean, Kenneth Walker only had 10 runs total. I mean, that would have never happened with Marshawn Lynch here, right? Lynch would have had 23 carries regardless, and I think some of the runs, they were kind of like right up the middle and then just running, like you said, into brick walls. The one play that you're talking about where he ran to the outside, it was almost there. I would have liked to see, an end around or something like that as well, or some sort of play. What happened to lining up 3 tight ends and just running the damn ball with 3 tight ends in the game, or at least play action off of it and have your tight ends involved, to get the tight ends more involved? Because it seemed like that was at the start of the second half. They started getting the tight ends the ball, and it was like, great, now they're actually doing something. And it just, on offense, it was really frustrating. I was very confused by like just the game plan and just like kind of what you said, like almost trying to wait and read off what they're trying to do instead of just going and attacking. Like, go attack them and make them adjust. Don't adjust to what they're doing. Yeah,
absolutely. And I don't know, because I don't really know how to assess the offense on this game, Robbie, because I know I'd actually started to write my post, midway through the third quarter, and then Geno fumbled, and then I rewrote a little bit of it, and then it was kind of ready to go. And I was reflecting on the performance that we'd seen from Geno Smith, and then after that, in that final 8 minutes, he was on fire again. He that touchdown pass to Marquise Goodwin, really good throw under pressure, great catch.
That was a fantastic catch.
Fantastic catch, and he was. I say, in the press conference afterwards, he was very emotional, Marquise Goodwin. I think it's the 5th anniversary of when his son sadly passed away, and he was incredibly emotional afterwards. It was quite moving, actually. And great touchdown pass. And Geno Smith moved around, and he looked like the Geno that we've all come to love over the last few weeks. But in the first half, I don't know. His body language was shocking, Robbie. There was one point where, it was like the 3rd or 4th drive where he sprinted off the field and looked like he was angling for an argument with somebody. He just didn't seem. He seemed flustered and panicky on the field, and agitated and surly off it. And that was frustrating because it was sort of the opposite of how he kept his cool last week.
Yeah, I actually want to touch base on that real fast, Rob. I'm glad you brought that up because that's something that I noticed. And I don't think it was just Geno, but it was DK, and it was some other guys too. It seemed like they were just complaining the whole time, like wanting flags all the time. And I was like, you didn't get it. Just play the damn game. You know, it was getting real frustrating to watch them get frustrated over and over and over with the refs instead of just like, okay, I didn't get the call, go make the play the next time. But you're right. I saw that he went running off the field and he was arguing with somebody. I don't know if it was about the route run or what it was, but it just felt very
all
off.
game.
All game, yeah.
All game. And the cameras won't have picked up half of the stuff. The Seahawks players were constantly complaining at the refs. There was one point where Uchenna and Nwosu, I don't know how he didn't get a flag. I mean, given the flag for DK Metcalf was thrown, I have no idea. Nwosu was right in the face of a ref. He then went away. Then he came back and got in his face again. You know, it was all game. It was everybody. You know, Carroll was down for the look, and I get it. I can't remember a game where in recent memory, Robbie, where the refs have picked up 2 flags on offense. You know, the pass interference one was a complete head scratcher. You know, I don't get annoyed by refs. I think refs make stupid mistakes in every game, and it's never anything that really agitates me. But I could see why a lot of people could be agitated by that one. And then the one at the end, when they picked up the flag. Now listen, I was shaking my head because there was 2 flags thrown for late hits on the quarterback. I think my head's all over the place. It's been a long couple of days. And I don't want to see flags for stuff like that, Robbie. I don't enjoy seeing that. You know, the quarterback slides. Quarterbacks have become a protected species. A player has to be able to go and make a play. And if the slide comes in, unless there's an egregious hit on the quarterback in that situation that could cause injury, I don't think just having to flop on the quarterback should warrant a flag. So I wasn't that enamored with a flag. But then once it's thrown, you've got to call the penalty. They waved it off on the Geno Smith slide at the end, and I don't know why they did that. I don't think it mattered because they scored a touchdown anyway. But do you see my point? Like that's unusual for the refs to pick up 2 flags like that, and they were in the face of the refs all the time. But I did think a little bit like you're arguing too much about this.
Yeah,
you know, you look like you've lost it. You've lost your cool a bit as a team.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like typically you can tell that's the way the game's going to go. If they're just arguing a lot, then I just don't feel like you win a lot. I mean, we've seen that in the past, like, you know, when back in the LOB era, when they would get all pissed off the refs, and you could see it happen. Like it would just be a game where you end up just losing because you spent most of your time arguing for no damn reason instead of just getting your head back in the game. So,
we've had a super chat from Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. Dude, I swear the clock kept running at least twice after Kenneth Walker ran out of bounds. Suspect to say the least. Lost maybe 3 minutes off the game. It depends when it is, Jeff. The rules are, I don't think the clock stops unless it's the last 5 minutes. So I don't know if you're speaking specifically about the last 5 minutes there. I don't know. But yeah, the clock, if you go out of bounds before the final 5 minutes, I think they restart the clock once the ball's been spotted for the next play. So
I think he might have been referring to one of the last drives but I think we ended up scoring. But yeah, I think I know what he's talking about with one of the drives when they kept throwing to Kenneth Walker and he kept running out of bounds.
If it's in the last
I didn't notice it, but maybe that's what he's referring to.
If it's in the last 5 minutes, they have to stop the clock. So if it wasn't the last 5 minutes and they didn't, then yeah, you've got a legit point there. Thank you for the super chat. If you have a question, super chat it, and we will come to it for sure. I'm gonna play a couple of clips. So David has asked whether I managed to ask Pete Carroll any questions. It felt weird actually, Robbie, afterwards, because I didn't feel there was anything to really get into with Pete Carroll. Because obviously it was a disappointing performance, but he came out and said it was a disappointing performance. He highlighted where they weren't good enough, and I felt like there's not really anything to go at here. It kind of they're neither. It wasn't a euphoric win where you can talk about a lot of positives. It was a disappointing loss, but it feels like a lot of this is correctable. But I did ask a couple of questions, so I'm going to play a couple of those for you now. I think the first one is me asking, and if this is the first one, then apologies in advance because you will see my hand, my bony fingers. I have very bony fingers, waving and wafting in front of the camera. So apologies for that, but you'll get the gist of the question. So here we go.
Why were you not able to have more success on third downs on both sides of the ball?
Yeah, we didn't function well at all.
the either side, like you're saying, it was 1 for 9 or something, and like 10 for 15 or something on the other side. That spells what happened in the game, our inability to function there. Some change of looks. We got late with a couple of situations and didn't get exactly the way we wanted to get it lined up and on offense. And defensively, they threw and caught it in spectacular fashion. The guys making the plays, they got great receivers, and they showed it tonight. They came through with guys hanging all over them and with some terrific throws. And they kept converting, and that was the difference in the game.
Which I think is a fair enough answer, Robbie. There's you kind of want to say, well, look, you were one. The Seahawks were 1 of 9 on third down, I think, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were 10 of 15. They just got their asses kicked up front. They couldn't get the push that they needed. I mean, there was a really lousy third down in the first half where I think they needed a yard or two. Robbie, they ran the ball, and Kenneth Walker was dumped for a loss of about 2 or 3 yards, and that kind of summed it up. There was no movement on Seattle's behalf. Tampa Bay did get movement, and when they needed Tom Brady to make a throw, they often did. Mike Evans had a big game. Julio Jones there obviously had that long touchdown on a busted coverage. That was on a big third down. That's a huge third down play, Robbie. In that, it's 0-0. You hold them to 3 there. No real loss, no real damage. Blown coverage on third down. Not only you're not getting off the field, it was a touchdown that I know Julio. No disrespect to Julio Jones, but that's a touchdown that I could have scored, probably.
Yeah, there was quite a few times we had them in 3rd and long, and they were able to pick up the first down or score. And I feel like that's been kind of the case for the all season, really. On the offensive side of the ball, there was a time Geno Smith had a clear running lane just to go run for the first down. He needed 2 yards. He had it, and for some reason threw some terrible pass that wasn't even close to being completed, and ran off the field complaining about something when he should have just taken off for the first down. But that's not good enough. You need to be able to convert those third downs, and you need to get, when you're in 3rd and long, you need to stop them on 3rd and long, get that punt situation, because giving up those big plays is just, you're not going to win many games playing that way. And it's been something that's been consistent throughout the season that I'd like to see them need to improve on over the bye. Something they need to really focus on.
But it's funny, isn't it, Robbie? Because over the years, there's been so many conversations, especially between people on Seahawks Twitter, about the right and wrong way to play, and this is what you have to do, and this is the modern NFL, and whether you should go for it on 4th down, and whether you should bother running the ball. It's actually just such a simple game. If you can beat the other team up in the trenches, there's a decent chance you will dominate, and then it opens everything up. The run, the pass, and third downs are big. If you win third downs and you win in the trenches, you will win pretty much every single time. It's as simple as that. Tampa Bay lost a turnover battle today, but they comfortably beat the Seahawks, apart from a little bit of a tiny scare at the end when they're just trotting out the offense and killed the last 4 minutes. I mean, it's a very, very simple game, football. If you've got the dogs up front to make big plays, you can do it. I was having a conversation on the blog with somebody last night, and they were saying, look, maybe the Seahawks will look at defensive backs again in the draft because, coverage is the main thing to creating pressure. I was like, no, I don't believe any of that. I think all it comes down to is it's those big players in the middle, up front. Can you drive people off the ball? Can you create pressure? Can you get into the backfield? Can you blow up plays? That's it. You need guys who are going to F the play up. And right now, the Seahawks have got a good collection of decent defensive linemen, but they don't have anybody who can F the play up off the edge or inside. It's great that Uchenna and Nwosu's got all those sacks. Really pleased with him. What a signing he has been. He's not somebody who F's the play up. You need somebody who's just that bit of special sauce about them, who can really impact games. And the Seahawks haven't got that. And how you find that is the hardest thing, Robbie. Because unless you're picking 1st overall and can go and get a Myles Garrett, or you happen to be very, very fortunate and get an Aaron Donald at 10 or wherever it was, or 13 where the Rams took him, those players do not grow on trees. They are generally very, very high picks. Jalen Carter and Will Anderson will go in the top 5 this year because teams are looking for those players all of the time. Miles Murphy ain't an F the play up guy. Brian Bresee isn't. Maybe Tyree Wilson will prove to be that, but he's got to be more consistent. Finding that guy is the hardest possible thing. And if the Seahawks had a player like that, we might have seen a different set of results on third down today. That wouldn't have improved the Seahawks, obviously, who were 1 for 9, but it would have helped certainly against Tampa Bay. Shane has asked me in the chat who I have in mind to be that missing player. I mean, I've mentioned one already. Kalijah Kancey could be an option there, Shane. There are one or two others, but if I had the answer to that $1 million question, I think they'd probably offer me a job, and they haven't done that. So I'm not sure that it's as easy as sort of just, I can give you some names, but actually finding that guy who's going to do it, it's very, very hard. So there's that. And then the other thing that I asked about, Robbie, because obviously there was a story today about Seattle's desire to retain Geno Smith and Drew Lock as it happens. Now, that to me is a bit of a non-story, but it was one of the Sunday splash reports. But the interesting thing for me was that Ian Rappaport, who I was going to say broke the news, but I mean, look, it's a bit like saying Pete Carroll desires to have breakfast tomorrow. I mean, like, why wouldn't you want to keep both quarterbacks? Even if you intend to draft a quarterback, Robbie, you'd quite like to have Geno Smith and Drew Lock come back. So it's a bit of a state in the obvious situation. But I wanted to ask Pete Carroll about it because I wanted to term the question as why can't those conversations happen now? I agree that the conversations shouldn't happen until the end of the season because I think that the league has to set the market for Geno Smith and for Drew Lock. I think you need that information. So that's what I would suggest, which I think it's wise for the Seahawks not to have those talks now because they're going to be bidding against themselves. But I still think it needed to be asked of Pete Carroll. So here's the question that I put to Pete Carroll on this.
There was a report earlier today about your eagerness to keep the two quarterbacks, Drew Lock and Geno Smith. Is there a possibility that those talks with those two players could begin before the end of the season? Is that a possibility?
I don't know. That's a really good question. We're not there talking about that yet. We're in the middle of the season and we're doing the things we need to do. But there's a conversation that's coming. We understand that. We're really pleased with our guys. I think they've done a great job. Geno's having a fantastic season. He showed it again tonight. And we really like Drew also. So we'll see how that goes. But I don't have any updates for you on that.
Okay, so no revelation there. But that's not the point. I wasn't expecting Pete Carroll to go, thanks for asking that. Yes, we will start those talks tomorrow at 4 p.m. That's not what I was expecting him to say. But it warrants a question, Robbie, because people are saying constantly on the internet, sign Geno, get Geno signed up, do this, give him $30 million. That's the conversation that I have in the comment section. Probably the only thing that I end up talking about more is Michael Penix Jr. and Bo Nix at the moment. So that's the conversation that people want to have about the Seahawks. For me, it's the big story. What is going to happen at quarterback is the big story at every team. And Seattle's plans at quarterback are very, very important. So I wanted to ask him, could those talks happen a little bit sooner? And the one thing we did get from that answer was he said, we know those conversations are coming down the line. But he also said we're in the middle of the season. It's not going to happen yet. And he acknowledged that those conversations are probably going to happen at the end of the season. I can't remember. I've listening to it there. I've already forgotten whether he said, at the end of the season or not. But that to me, it was we are going to talk, but it's not now. It's not happening now. They're on a bye. They're not going to sit down and talk with him now. The chances of a contract being worked out before the end of the season, Robbie, seem extremely slim. This is something that's going to happen to the end of the year. And that is something for Seahawks fans, I think, to know and to hear, because it isn't going to happen before then, however much people might want that to happen before.
Yeah, there wasn't anything about his answer that surprised me. I mean, it was a very typical Pete answer. But, you suspect that, the league will set its market. You're not going to go prepay him now. Let's see it across the full season and see how it goes. What happens if you pay him in the second half of the season, he turns back into the old Geno, then you're going to be real disappointed in your purchase. So you don't have any buyer's remorse. You want to see it throughout the full season. Let the league set the market and see what happens. Plus, you want to see how the draft falls. I mean, there's so many things that could go into play. So I'm not surprised by his answer at all.
Yeah, not surprised. But I do think it's a clarification that needs to be sort of acknowledged, and it's why I felt it needed to be asked, because people will talk, if Geno Smith blows the Raiders away in 2 weeks, people are going to say, sign Geno, get him to a new deal. But now we know that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. If it happens, it's going to be March or February or April. It's not going to be now. It's not going to be before the season ends, based on what he's just said there. So I thought that was an important clarification. And personally, Robbie, I'd still be open-minded to drafting somebody, even if they keep Geno Smith and Drew Lock. You've got, a number of picks. I think perhaps the moment to trade up and go all in is receding. I don't think that's necessary unless Geno Smith turns back into a pumpkin in the next few weeks. I don't think you need to go and do that. And I think there is something to be said that if Geno Smith can carry on playing well, then maybe, yes, adding a load of players at different positions would be a good thing. I think, again, today, the one thing that I really picked up from today is you've got to have as much talent as possible, Robbie, as much talent as possible. And you've got to work on these guys, and you've got to be able to develop, and you've got to have a thick roster. And the Seahawks, to me, still feel like they've got quite a thin roster. It feels like there's a few areas where if they could just get a little bit better in terms of starting, or they could just get a little bit better in terms of depth, then they'd be better for it, and they would be able to take a step forward. Yes, it's going to be important to have a quarterback who can win your games. I think Geno Smith's showing you a base level of performance that makes you believe that you can go and win a lot of football games. I don't think he's ever going to be Patrick Mahomes, but I don't know, Robbie. Personally, for me right now, I don't really feel like you need to necessarily go out and get that guy. And I'm not sure, short of Anthony Richardson and Will Levis and CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, that guy's going to be there. So unless you're going to trade up for one of those, then I don't think you're going to find them. And people are saying, look, they should draft linebackers and stuff like that. For me, Robbie, that's not the big priority for me. And the most important counter to that is there aren't any linebackers worth taking for me in the first round. There are interesting linebackers in this draft, but they're very few and far between, and they're, for me, to be taken a little bit later on. And if you're going to add at linebacker, I'd say go and get an experienced old head who can just do your base standard performance.
100%. I mean, we've talked about this before, but I mean, I would have rather seen them re-sign KJ Wright and have him playing in Cody Barton. I know he had a pick today, but still, like, I think that kind of presence, that kind of smarts, he has the ability to cover the tight end. Like, go get a veteran player that can come in at the linebacker position. And then, if you can find that guy that you're talking about on the D-line in the first round, go and get him. But that's why, because of how much you've talked about that it's a front-loaded first round, and if we're not going to be in that first round, why not trade your first round picks to move up to get one of those guys? Why not? I mean, if it's a front loaded first round draft, then that's where we need to be. If not, then trade back both picks in the second. I mean, I don't want to just pick a guy in the first who has a second round grade just because that's where we're picking. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I understand. I think it's how expensive is it going to be? I also worry sometimes about the pressure of, spending 2 first-round picks on a player. And I think we're seeing that a bit with Trey Lance. I mean, who's the guy? I can't remember his name. The guy who was at New Orleans, the pass rusher, the small school guy who was at Texas, UTSA, I think it was. Can't remember his name. But the Saints traded a future pick to move up and go and get him. And he's been okay. But he's not been, elite edge rusher. And that's the thing. Sometimes I think when you actually go and move up and get a guy, it puts a lot of pressure on them to be an amazing player, an 80, 90 PFF grade type of player. And I just wonder, and it's going to be a fascinating conversation to have, Robbie, because I was watching Clemson yesterday, and Brian Bresee starts the game with a sack, and you think, hey, here we go, he's getting back to his best now, and then did absolutely nothing. There's a lot of reps where he's just being easily handled 1v1. And I'm trying to work out a player like that. Can he come in and be a difference maker for Seattle, or is he just Marcus Davenport's the player? Thank you, Carey, for explaining. That's what I was talking about. But can Brian Bresee be a difference maker, or is he just the occasional splash player? Because you watch Brian Bresee, and I said this to Jeff the other day. If you watch Brian Bresee's high school tape, it's like when Jadeveon Clowney was playing in high school. He looks like it's like men against boys. It's ridiculous. He could probably play every position on the field in high school. He was the top ranked recruit in the country for a reason. But then he gets to college and you just see flashes, and he's had an ACL injury. Look, he's had a very difficult last few weeks. because of the death of his sister. And that could be playing a part in why he's not being that consistent. And I like him as a guy. You're not going to have any issues with him. He's going to come in and work his arse off. But whether he can be elite, I'm not sure. It's going to be interesting to sort of figure out what they're going to do. And the other thing is, Robbie, where are they going to be picking? Because Denver, as we stand, I think Denver are leading against Tennessee. If Denver start getting on a bit of a roll here, you could end up picking twice in the middle of the first round, and then it's good night Vienna. You can forget about all these, top pass rushers, top defensive linemen. If you're picking twice in the middle of the first round, I don't know what they're going to do. And I don't know if people like this. I mean, look, because obviously this is an instant reaction stream. I don't know if people want me to throw names out there, for certain players or not. You let me know in the live chat what you want from these things. I've got my horizontal board, which I think I am going to publish this week, Robbie.
I was going to say, I think we're all anxiously waiting that horizontal board.
I know it's been a real tease. I'm very sorry about that, but I wanted to get enough players on it to make it worthwhile. I didn't want to be sort of, well, where's this guy? Where's that guy? And not watch them yet. But so the linebackers, for example. I mean, people talking about linebackers. I think it's interesting to work out what they're going to do, because Trenton Simpson's been a real disappointment for Clemson this year. He didn't play yesterday because of an injury, so that adds to it. I'm not a big Nolan Smith guy, Robbie, at Georgia. People think he's like a first-round player. I've never seen anything that suggests he's a first-round player, apart from his testing at Spark, which is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, he's got a Spark score for the ages, and his personality is infectious. He seems like a really nice guy. I can imagine the Seahawks really liking Nolan Smith. I just find it hard to place him because I don't think he's a first-round pick. He's got first-round credentials in terms of his athleticism, but he's not a pass rusher. I think he has to sort of be molded into a good linebacker. Maybe the Seahawks can do that and turn him into it, because he's got the frame and that to be flying around and making plays. But at what range do you want to take him? And then you've got other guys like, I don't know if people have seen Owen Papo at Auburn, who's been awful for most of this season. And then last night had a great game. I think the coaching changes have really helped him. Another fantastic athlete who might be available in the middle rounds, who could come in and be a really plus starter for you because of his athletic qualities. So people like that are the ones that, I don't know. And anyone who reads the blog will know I'm a big fan of Ventrell Miller. He had a very, very good game for Florida again yesterday as they hammered South Carolina. I think he's a tremendous player, just really solid and sturdy. I don't know if he'll test well enough for Seattle. But, they're kind of some of the names that are on this board, and you have to wait and see for some of the others. And, I can see that one or two people are starting to ask, where's so-and-so on the board and where do you see these? Well, I think I'll publish it. I'll publish it. And bear in mind, this is a long time before the Combine and the Senior Bowl, so it's going to change. But this is sort of like my initial feeling. I've watched a lot of football over the last few weeks to be able to put this board together. We've had a super chat from Jason. If the top of the draft isn't great value, what about trading down? Is there better value at the end of the first or the start of the second? Not really. I mean, I think there's better value in the second. But the problem is, Robbie, is we've seen this before, haven't we? The Seahawks trading down, and you end up with a Marquise Blair or LJ Collier or, people like that. Sometimes you're better off just staying where you are and taking the best player. Because you can look through it over the years of when the Seahawks have traded down and passed on a player and taken a lesser player, and you think, well, just stay and, get him instead. And I think there is something to be said for the way they handled this draft. There wasn't as much movement up or down, was there? But they just picked in the right areas and brought in talent. Do you think that's a better way of doing it? Because right now, I'm not that bothered about moving up or down, I don't think. I'm not ruling it out, but I'm not crazy about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm game for either. I like what they did this last year. I just want them to hit home runs with whatever pick it is, and I really want them to target best player available and not draft from need. Like, I think that's what ends up getting us. We took Collier because we needed a defensive end, right? And that's what ended up happening. He ended up not being very good. By the way, I just want to point out, while you were chatting, I've been watching some 2021 Kalijah Canty highlights, and that dude is freak. He is an animal. He shed 2 blocks on a Texas A&M guy and just destroyed the quarterback. I'm starting to get excited about the possibility.
Well, I mean, look, I'll give you, because I'm teasing a lot of this thing. And Shane asked, and Shane, given that the second part of your name is Germany and I'm in Germany, I'll answer this one. At the moment, I've got Kalijah Canty as a fringe first rounder, and I just thought, sod it, I'm putting him in that range because if you have that first level of first step quickness, his hands combine with his feet brilliantly. So what right off the snap, burst, engages, can swim, can club away, can rip through a blocker, get into the backfield, and then he's got the speed to finish. I just think that there are not many people who can do that. And he is the trouble is, and listen, I wouldn't want to be. I can sit here in a hotel room in Munich and say something like that. I'm not the one who's going to give this guy millions of dollars and expect him to come in and live up to a price tag of like a late first round pick or something, or a top 45 pick. But because if you put him on the field, Robbie, in a game like that, he may just get blown off the ball because he's 6 foot and 280 pounds. And they were kept doing this at the sideline. The Tampa Bay offensive linemen, they kept going like that after every run because they want to keep running because we're going to kick these guys' arse. Mm-hmm. And if they were doing that and he's playing out there, he could get run over. But the one thing he's got is just money can't buy it, Robbie. It's that quick twitch, first step. He's got the moves with his hands. He can burst into the backfield, and I want some of that. I'd almost be willing to just roll the dice on somebody like that. But I don't think he's going to have long arms, and he's not tall or big.
Yeah, well, there's a reason why Poona Ford went undrafted, right? He's 5'11", and he plays defensive line. And so there's a reason why he went undrafted, but he was one of our best players last year. I don't think, as long as you got the dog in you, I don't really care how you play. Like, I don't really care if you've got the athletic ability and want to go out there and get it. Like, that's what I want to see. I want to see guys who want to go out there and are going to just give it their all and be the best player on the field. Like, size shouldn't really matter. I mean, we've seen it time and time again where size isn't an issue, but
it's how you fit them into the equation, isn't it?
Sure,
if you've got bigger guys, can you live with him as a 3-4 defensive end, for example? Mm-hmm. Can you live with him in obvious passing situations? At what point, if you feel like he can only be a big third down and long player or someone who gets you off the field, at what range are you willing to take a player who is not going to play early downs? That's a consideration. It means you can limit his stock somewhat. It's finding that sort of sweet spot where you think, okay, he's only going to play X amount of snaps, but those X amount of snaps might win you a game.
Yeah. That's a good point.
And there's others, that there's going to be some real big conversations coming up. Another guy who I'd sort of toss into the mix there is a guy called Tyrus Wheat, who is about 6'2", awkwardly sized, Robbie. He's about 270 pounds, 6'2". He's not long, plays off the edge. There's got a very similar body to Kalijah Kancey in terms of shape, but he's going to blow up the combine. And you see it. You see little flashes from him. I mean, like there's footage online of him dunking a basketball and playing amazing on the basketball court. And you think, wow, it's unnatural to see a guy with that size move, but he's not conventional in terms of size for the NFL. How do you project a guy like that? Because they're not. It's easy when somebody looks like Darrell Taylor and walks past and you think, okay, that's an NFL pass rusher. But when the guy walks past and he's 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2", and he's not long and lean, he's not a terrible. You see some of these pass rushers in this class, like B.J. Ojulari and Will McDonald. They're built like a praying mantis, and that's kind of what you're looking for in a pass rusher. And then you get these shorter, stubbier guys with carrying a bit of weight, but they're dunking basketballs and running a 4.6. You think, well, you'd love that speed and quickness, but is the length going to be an issue? How are you going to manage all of that? So there's a lot of angles to this. Can I just say, by the way, my favorite bit about today, and I want to sort of end with a few reflections on Germany. My favorite bit of the whole day, by an absolute mile, Robbie, was you can walk out of the press room at Bayern Munich Stadium. And I was walking out and I was going to go up to where the press box is. And we were at the end where the Seahawks locker room is in the press room. And the players would walk past. There's like a little mix zone there where you could go and talk to some of them after the game. But the players were walking in and out when they were going to the field before and after the game. And I got my sort of camera. I thought, what the hell? I'm going to take a video, put it on YouTube. It's on there now. Of the players walking past. And, some of them were saying hi and all this and playing up to it. Cade Johnson, who I interviewed probably about 18 months ago, who I've not spoken to since, came straight over and shook my hand and said hello. And I couldn't believe it. because I just thought, how was he remembered who I am, you know, from that? And I just thought that was, first of all, what a memory. And second of all, I just thought that was great. I just thought it was just sort of really nice of him to do that and just come and say hello and shake hands. I was blown away by that, and it was sort of it made my day, that, because I thought, yeah, do you know what? At least he must have enjoyed that interview, and it kind of made it worthwhile, because a lot of those interviews happen at 3 o'clock in the morning because players are like practicing and stuff like that, and I have to get up in the middle of the night and do them. And I thought, yeah, do you know what? It was worth all of those late nights just for someone like that to come over and shake your hand. So,
well, it also makes you wonder, man. Maybe he watched the interview afterwards, and then maybe players are watching.
I suspect they're not, but maybe he.
Hey, you never know. I'm just saying.
Maybe he is. Yeah. But no, I really appreciate that. As I also appreciate this from Blitzy the Clown, Tip Jar. Thanks, Rob, for all the effort and expense to give the blog community a front row seat for this event. I really enjoyed the video clips of your Q&A with Pete. That's a treat that I could do with a lot more of. Cheers. And Blitzy, thank you for that. Really appreciate you supporting the channel and sending us that super chat. Really, really appreciate that. And Mike has sent one in as well. Great insight on the Munich weekend onward. I mean, it was a great occasion, Robbie. It's just disappointing that the result didn't go Seattle's way. I mean, the atmosphere in the stadium was outstanding. I want to play a little video from when I was in the stadium at the end. So just, I think this was the 2-minute warning. They just started playing all the old hits. So this was a bit of John Denver, which popped.
President.
So they played the song and they carried on singing it for about a minute afterwards. It was really impressive. And then they played the English national anthem, which is Sweet Caroline. That's a joke that English people will get, I assure you, because that's kind of become the song that you hear at every single sporting occasion in England. But they played that, they all lapped that up. They were singing it on the way into the train. It also made me realize that English and German people are basically the same, even though we don't necessarily see it that way in a sporting sense. English and the Germans are basically the same. They're very, very, very similar people. The atmosphere before the game was fantastic. There's just something, you know what? Because at the end of the day, look, I'm a massive Seahawks geek, and to sort of watch the team every week, to often sort of stay up to the middle of the night, to sort of have a chance, Robbie, to go and just sort of be that close, to see the players that you watch every week walk past you and sort of realize how big these offensive linemen are. Because I'm 6'4", and these guys are walking past and they're like tanks, sort of just walking through the, to the playing field. It's incredible. It was a great experience, and thoroughly enjoyed the opportunity to go and ask Pete Carroll a couple of questions, and just loved every minute of it. I just wish that they got a win at the end there, Robbie, and that's the real shame.
Well, you did pre-warn us that you might be bad luck going to Seahawks games.
I have a losing record watching this.
Yeah. But they did show the fans singing the John Denver on the broadcast and getting into it. So even by the way, the broadcasters were annoyed today. Rich Eisen.
Oh, was it? Why was it?
Yeah. I don't know. Just like
who was on it?
It was Kurt Warner, Michael Irvin, Rich Eisen, those guys. The guys who normally do like NFL network.
I bet.
Stuff.
Was there just a lot of like uncomfortable banter going on throughout the game?
Just weird. I don't know. It just wasn't my favorite. But I was going to ask you if you were the one who started the wave going, because I saw the wave going a couple of times.
I'm a big anti-wave.
Yeah, okay.
I never join in. I mean, I'm the old man who's sat there going, I'm never no. And for me, like when the wave starts, it's a show of the crowd being bored. So that started up, and I was like, yeah. But I'm in the press box, so I can't start a wave. But food in the stadium, not very good, I'm afraid. Germany needs to work harder on that. Tottenham Hotspur Stadium have got you licked there in terms of the press food. But apart from that, great occasion. Loads of Seahawks fans, Robbie. Loads of Seahawks. I was woken this morning by a chant of Seahawks at the train station, which is across the road from my hotel, which made me, one, sort of pleasantly pleased to hear that chant. Two, very annoyed that it had woken me up. And then three, also made me think, crap, do I need to set off to the stadium already? Because when I looked out the window, there was like loads of people there. But that's just because a lot of German people basically wanted to go and drink beer in the tailgate before the game started. But a lot of Seahawks fans. Great atmosphere. More Seahawks fans than Tampa Bay fans by a mile. It's just a shame that they got to see that level of performance, I'm afraid. But never mind. We often at this time, Robbie, we have a quick look at Tankathon, see where the Seahawks are in the draft, and I'm going to carry on that trend to finish because we don't know what's going to happen with the Denver pick. But the Seahawks are down to 21st overall now after that loss, and they can't slip behind San Francisco, can they? So they're not going to be out of the wild card playoff picture, regardless of what happens today. But if San Francisco win their games in hand, which are against the Chargers today, and I can't remember who the other team is, I don't think it's a very good team, then they will obviously go above the Seahawks, which will be extremely annoying. But yeah, 21st, and it's saying 12th with the Denver pick, but obviously that depends on what Denver are doing, and I've not checked the score for a while. So
They are down 14-10.
Oh, well, good news. Come on to see, because I like having a top 10 pick. So go Titans. That could be a silver lining at the end of the day. Right.
That's right.
Any final thoughts, Robbie?
No, man. I'm glad that you got to experience that. I'm a little jealous that I didn't make the trip out there. I think that'd be fun. Plus, you and I haven't actually got to ever meet in person, so I'd love to actually make that happen. So, but it's cool to get behind the scenes and kind of see you get to, ask Pete some questions. I would have loved it if you had just drilled them a little bit harder, though. And be like, hey, what happened in those first 4 weeks with the defense? What the hell's going on? Why does this keep happening? But I am glad that you got a chance to do that. And, it's just cool to be able to see that. So no final thoughts other than, we're not going to win every game. And at least we made it competitive at the end. It would have been nice to see him come up and play a little bit better. But now we have our bye and an opportunity to keep improving.
Yeah. Well said. And they can't win every game, and they're not going to win every game this year. But so that's the perspective on it, I suppose. But it was a little bit disappointing, and we do have to meet up in person and do one of these slightly differently when we're in the same room, Robbie. I don't know when that could possibly be, but we'll have to try and go to a Seahawks game. What they need to do is they need to sort the gas and oil prices out around the country so that it's actually it cost me €60 to go from the airport to the hotel for this trip. It's a 10-minute drive. €60 is about $60 these days. That's how it costs as much as the flight over here to get a 10-minute taxi ride. So they need to sort the gas and oil prices out so that it's easier to fly over to America. And then I can either come and meet you for the combine or come and meet you for like a game in Seattle or something.
You should come to Indianapolis for the combine because this is the last year that's in Indy. After this, I think it's going to a new location.
Yeah, that would be good. As long as the flights are not obscene, then maybe we can work something out there. That would be good. Anyway, always a pleasure to speak to you, Robbie. Shame about the result today. Thank you for all the super chats. Always massively appreciated. What is also appreciated is liking the video because it helps. Subscribe. Leave a comment in the comment section afterwards if you want to give your thoughts on the game. That helps as well. Get involved. And SeahawksDraftBlog.com for more analysis. And as promised, that horizontal board will be live. And if I'm going to post a horizontal board, might as well post a mock draft as well. So maybe we'll do that next week too. Especially it's the bye week. We've got to have something to talk about, haven't we? So we'll get into all of that. Right. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye for now.